Hey, what's up guys, Chris here, back in No Man's Sky Beyond, and today we're going to jump right in with more than 10 advanced tips and tricks for y'all. And this is most probably going to be the last video like this that I'm going to post here on this channel, because at this point I believe we have covered probably all of the tips and tricks I could think of in this game. So let's jump right in, and of course also don't forget to leave a thumbs up on this video to show your support. Anyway, every now and then you might find yourself on a planet with frenzied sentinels, or simply got in trouble with them in the first place, case in which you kinda have only two options: either fight back, which is not always ideal, or run away. But what happens if your ship is not in range, you cannot call it, or there's simply no shelter to go into? Well, this is my preferred method of doing it, and that is of course by building my very own shelter and pretty much breaking line of sight with these sentinels. So what you can do is simply run away a little bit, disengage up until they lose sight of you, and then quickly dig yourself a hole into the ground, jump in it, and quickly cover it back up. Chances are that they are not going to be able to see you, so you can just stay in it for like 20 to 30 seconds up to a minute, and then just wait for the timer to run off, point at which you will lose all the wanted level and go back to whatever you were doing before that. So it's definitely very useful, especially if you're on a planet with frenzied sentinels and kinda want to hunt for very rare resources that get to sell for a lot but also attract sentinel attention. Now, we were talking about the main storyline, and one of the early missions in the game will bring you to an abandoned facility. Near this facility there's going to be a number of eggs that get to spawn, and for those who don't know this, if you attack these eggs and take them, they can be sold for a huge profit, but they also spawn some alien horrors, and these horrors can deal a ton of damage, there's a ton of them spawning, and they can quickly overwhelm you. So what you can do here is to dig a tunnel beneath them, dig a hole, and then just shoot them and have them fall nicely into your hands. And this is a much safer method of doing it. The horrors themselves will not be able to attack you most of the times, and it's definitely much cleaner and easier than taking them one by one and then running away like a fool. But selling these whisper eggs for a profit is not the only thing you can do with them. In fact, these are by far the best conversion to nanites in the game currently. So one single egg can be turned into 50 nanites, which means that a full stack of 5 can easily be turned into a refiner into 250 nanites. So if you're in the early game, you can turn these in for a profit, and if you're in the late game, you can hunt for these to get more nanites. Coming up next, did you know that you can actually have infinite jetpack even in the beginning of the game? And this is a feature that existed in the game since day one. As Sean-Marie put it, this is a way to give players the possibility to unstuck themselves in case they ever fall into a hole or anything that is too high up for them to reach. So if you get close to any structure or any, let's say, part of the terrain and you boost against it, the game will let you boost forever and you will never deplete your jetpack. And you can do this even on huge structures or, let's say, mountains, and climb them up really easily with your jetpack boost without ever reaching to zero, because this is a functionality of the game that existed since day one. So go ahead, give it a try, it's definitely useful, especially in the early game, and especially if you want to reach those high places that you would normally otherwise couldn't unless you had some really nice upgrades. You can just go against the wall itself and boost yourself up, and you will never run out of the jetpack. Now, the next tip that I have is for all of those who enjoy space combat, and that is the fact that you can actually use your entire fleet to help you out in combat. So whenever you get attacked by pirates, whenever you're fighting sentinels, you can actually summon your freighter, and both your freighter as well as your combat ships might get to attack any of the enemies that in turn attack you, or the ships or the freighter itself. So it's definitely very useful. I've made some really awesome space battles just because of this feature, and at some point I believe I even set up 2 freighters to fight one another, mine against the one from the sentinels. It's definitely a sight to behold, it's really fun to do it, and you can just sit back and have your freighter and your combat ships attack everything else that is otherwise in combat with you, and it is definitely useful. Coming up next, since we were talking about money, let's talk about free stuff as well instead. So whenever you find yourself on a trading post, pay close attention to the various cargo boxes and chests that you find spawned over there. Chances are that many of them contain a lot of important loot, many of which can sell for quite a bit on the space stations, but the most important of them all are the green damage containers, which can oftentimes drop, let's say, Gek relics, Corvex casings, Corvex convergence cubes, and all that kind of cool stuff that you use either to craft blueprints, either to use them to find portals. So it is definitely a very good way of getting these materials, and whenever I'm finding myself near a trading post, which is quite often, I always pay close attention to these green boxes as they can drop some really useful resources. Moving on next, this is something that many of you might not know, but freighters, unlike ships, don't have any restriction when it comes to what types of systems they can travel to. So for example, if you were to travel to a green, red or blue system, the freighter only needs its basic hyperdrive modules, and that is pretty much it. So if you happen to be in the part of the game when you didn't get the indium hyperdrive or the other upgraded hyperdrives, or if you just happen to not have installed the upgrade yet, you can go ahead on your main deck on your freighter and simply teleport from there, and you can travel to pretty much any type of system you want to, be it blue, red or green, it doesn't matter, your freighter is going to be able to do that. Now another tip that I want to go over is all about system economies, and you will want to pay attention to these as you progress through the game, because the richer the economy, the more materials you will find in it, the better chances are for S-class things to spawn, and of course the more materials you will find on the trading post, including trading goods. So whenever you see a system that reads wealthy, affluent, prosperous, advanced, there's a difference of at least a few thousand between the richest system and the poorest system when it comes to just purchasing this. You can get like 4,000 of the same material if you go to a simple rich system. I'm going to drop an updated guide for trading routes really soon, so this is a tip that you need to keep in mind for that. Moving on to the next one, this is not so much as a tip as much of a heads up, and this is of course to pay close attention to your log, because every now and then when you're doing especially the main storyline, additional secondary missions might spawn, case in which the game will default to them. So what this means is that you will pretty much be put off track and the game will prompt you to do something else, and if you never check the log, you will never know that you actually never made progress into the actual main story mission of the game. So for example, if you're like me and you want to complete the main Artemis storyline as fast as possible, what you want to do is to make sure every now and then that in your log that mission is actually picked and you are doing it, and the same goes for literally anything else. If you want to do the space anomaly missions, if you want to follow the Atlas path, make sure every now and then that that specific mission is selected and it also appears on the right corner of your screen, otherwise you're just going to get sidetracked and you will end up doing something else that you probably didn't want to do. Another quick heads up that I have for you, and this is something that is kinda common sense, but I just wanted to bring it up. Let's say sometimes you find a really awesome system that most probably looks cool, maybe it has an amazing lush planet that you don't want to lose, but you cannot stay in it because you have to do something else, such as doing the storyline or traveling somewhere else to collect other resources. This is the time to take advantage of the upload and rename discoveries and give a name or a description to the system or the planet or whatever you discovered, so that you know what it is. In my case, I really like naming or renaming systems that hold really beautiful lush planets, especially ones with calm weather. In this case, I found a system with 3 tropical planets and all of them were pretty decent, so what I did is I went ahead and simply renamed the system itself and just added a small description in the parentheses so that I know what the system means, so that whenever I'm in the late game with hundreds of discoveries or even thousands, I always know where to look at because I remember the descriptions. Another one that I have for you guys is to always pay close attention to the rocks and the plants that list bonus resources beneath their names. You can see this being indicated by the question marks as well as the prompt to analyze that specific rock or plant. So what you want to do here is to scan before mining these, as they will more often than not drop some bonus resources. For example, you can get some really useful stuff like salt, uranium to power up your ship, and in the case of plants, oxygen, which is extremely useful if you're playing on survival, case in which you will want this resource in the very beginning of the game. Once you do scan one of the specimens, all of the others will give you the bonus resources once you mine them, so it's definitely going to be very useful for you, especially since you're just getting these bonuses without even trying too much. And last but not least, also don't forget about the crashed freighters. These are some of the first encounters you will have in the game. There's even one story that brings you to them, but also pay close attention to the fact that they can hold cargo, and this cargo often is either underneath it, either in one of its rooms, so you'll have to blast some of these doors. You will also have to recharge these compartments, unfortunately, but it's not that hard to pull it off, and you can quickly get some antimatter or some other very rare resources that are very useful in the beginning. Unfortunately, you don't get units anymore, it seems. In the past you would get like 50 to 60,000 units, but you can still get some really awesome resources that themselves can be sold for quite a nice profit. Anyway, this is it with this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, a thumbs up on it would be super appreciated. Also, don't forget to subscribe and activate that notification bell for even more awesome content like this, and I will see you guys next time.